Dude, you are getting well. Dude.
That was
Hello.
awesome.
I'm
Hi.
glad you enjoyed that. Dudes all over the planet of all genders, I want to say welcome to this podcast of Dude, You're Getting Well. And I'm so excited to have a friend. I've really met her through my wife, through the, I want to, well, actually through the gift of voice. Like Cassie, my wife started exploring her voice and looked up like holistic women, something singing. And inside of that container, she came home one day and she was just unleashed and met this incredible woman, and they kept connecting, and I would just hear them laugh and have like amazing, incredible, beautiful, inspiring conversations and lots of fun. And then I got to hear her sing, and I was just enchanted. And since then, I've got to work with her and had some healing and work done in the past. So like so without further ado, I would like to welcome a dear friend, Rachael Shaffer of Urban Empath, internal family systems facilitator and intuitive energy healer.
Thank
How you
you.
doing, Rachael? You're welcome.
I'm so honored to be on your podcast. Ben, yeah, it's just watching you, on your platforms and like sharing amazing information and energy. I mean, your vibe's amazing. So I'm really honored to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, the feeling is mutual. So yeah, I've gotten to see you in a lot of different lights, and one of the things I was moved by is just your dedication to your well-being and in all walks of like life, energetically, spiritually, creatively. So we described sort of the kind of work you do when you grew up, before you grew up, when you were a little girl, a little person, and you're like, I want to be this when I grow up. Was it like, I'm going to be the urban empath and intuitive specialist for the world?
No, I actually have seen a video of myself with my dad asking that question. And I said I wanted to be a ballerina and a mother. So
Oh, wow.
I was a little dancer. I mean, I wasn't a great dancer, but I loved dance. I loved the arts from a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
I have
beautiful.
musicians in the family, so
Oh, yeah.
um,
Who is a musician in your family?
I have a couple of uncles on my dad's side. One's a great drummer in some bands, and my uncle Dave is a singer-songwriter. Was almost signed when he was like in the 80s in a band. So um, yeah, it kind of runs in the blood, I guess, the arts. When a
Yeah.
family's enthusiastic about it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, does like being an intuitive and healing and wellness run in the blood as well?
In a way, it does. I mean, my grandmother on my father's side was a very interesting woman. She actually cared for the elderly, and she actually did so in a very creative way. Like she would often like lift their spirits by dressing up in costumes and
That's
just
awesome.
performing for them, kind of
Yeah,
like Lucille Ball,
I love it.
coming in and just being silly. And on my mother's side, they cook. It's Italian. We're Italians, so
Oh,
they cook to heal people.
oh, nice.
But
You have had, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like one aspect of me as a healer is sort of not feeling like I fit, not seeing the ways I was connected, right? And it kind of put me on a path to um, figure out why I didn't feel
Yeah.
like I fit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. um, yeah, and I would ask you that. I'd ask you about your bloodline too, because like I just, musicians aren't historically known for the best self-care. And like, and we like, there's this stigma around creative people, like not having knowledge of like business or boundaries or structure or self-care. And that sort of that wildness and that fire and burning at both ends is where we draw our passion from. Do you relate to any of that? Or did you at any point in your life?
Yeah. I think, I don't know if wild is a way I would describe myself, but, definitely, um, feeling like, I don't fit and finally coming to be okay with that. And and when it's probably a wiser decision to conform and agree, I don't. When it's a wise decision to do so. So, um, there's something there, yeah. I
Uh,
guess you might call that wild, right?
yeah, I'm not sure. Whatever it is for you. And I hear the thing of not fitting in. So, can you walk us through a little bit of your experience from like wanting to be the ballerina and the mother to where you are today? And what was that experience of not fitting in, and how did you use that to work for you? Because I feel like I'm starting to hear that more and more. And almost every story, every interview, um, hear people say, like, I feel like I didn't fit in. I'm wondering if there's anyone that felt like they did fit in, you know? Um,
Good point.
and so I'm just, I wonder what that, if you could sort of walk us through what that path was for you to go um, from that little girl to where you are now. And like, what was the biggest challenge along the way that you faced around not fitting in?
Absolutely. Well, I think I was probably born in with some, uh, attributes such as a dissociative tendency, where I wasn't very, present or grounded.
Mm,
I think maybe I was born in with it, right? It's hard to say, but, I did experience, at 14 months, a break in the bond with mother.
mm. Can you
And
say more about that? Like, what did that look like?
my mother went to the hospital to have my brother, and, I, of course, did not understand. And she stayed in the hospital for, just under a week, I think, and, I was different after. There was a marked change in me, um, and this happens to many, many people. It doesn't have to happen as a physical break, such as I had. It can be, you know, um, heightened levels of cortisol while you're in the womb, or while your mother's in your grandmother's womb, right? Because the eggs are fully formed at that point. So, breaking the bond is very common, actually, this experience. And it creates a lack of trust in our experience here, because our relationship to our mother reflects so many aspects of life. That lent itself for me to feeling separation internally, not trusting myself, not understanding life, not feeling fully supported here.
What was the earliest age you remember feeling that way?
Well, the thing about, the dissociative patterns is there aren't a lot of solid memories, but I do have memories in school of just not understanding social interaction. I felt very awkward. Like, I felt like I had to learn how to be a human. And I'm not sure where that originated, that feeling, um, of I don't understand how people know what to say in a conversation. I had that experience of like, how are people becoming friends? I don't even understand that. Like, um,
Hmm.
so the earliest I can remember is probably, um, like nursery school, grade school, just not understanding what people expected of me or how to fit. I just didn't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's other people who can identify with that. And how did that, or did that affect you as an adult?
Yes, it creates trauma, right? It creates a stress response that we don't know how to um, be present with at that age. We don't know how to relieve stress for ourselves. And I really didn't know how to articulate what I was going through very, very well to anybody. So um, I just thought, oh, this is the hand I've been dealt. And so I just tried to manage the best I could. My coping was dissociating
Yeah.
primarily.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that you're coping too, because you know, so many of us make these decisions as children, and we're still walking around. A lot of us as grown adults having, from a 3-year-old, 7-year-old's choices, right? That we made up about something in the world that's not safe and how we need to protect ourselves. And then we're still can be walking around with those walls up, trying to protect ourselves from something that's not even real anymore.
Yeah.
Um, so do you and also want to say to people who are experiencing that this isn't to, for judgment. It's just to like take inventory and notice and reflect. Um, and to know that, if you've had these challenges that have been, coping skills at one point, to know that they were just that, they actually have served a purpose to help keep you safe, or at least your nervous system perceive that it's safer. Right.
Hmm.
So that was happening. And so do you feel like is this something you still deal with today, the dissociative
Yes, and I'm
aspects?
very grateful for my dissociative parts. They've gotten me through
Mm,
some rough stuff. Um, other traumatic events occurred, of course, and I knew how to leave my body so I could get through it. So, um, and I work with internal family systems, and this is about welcoming all parts. No parts are bad. They all have good intent. They might have bad behaviors, right? So things that we wish to change and shift, of course. So that's one of the modalities I work within, that we're all multiples with all of these different parts. Some of them protect us, and some we've disowned. Um, none of these subpersonalities are our true selves, right? Our true self is the essence of self, this higher aspect of who we are that can perfectly parent and heal these other parts that are carrying lots of burdens. So, um, welcoming those dissociative parts is important. Any of the coping parts, they have good intent.
mm. Thank you for mentioning that. I love that. And I want to come back to this before we do, and connected to it. I'm already thinking about reparenting. That's something that's come up a lot. Like we're walking around as these like broken children, maybe, or still carrying these things, and we're actually learning how to parent ourselves. Did you have parents who were there for you that showed you how to cope and self-soothe and deal with stuff like this? Did it, like, whether verbally or physically?
Um, the easy answer is no. Um, but you know, not to shift blame in their direction, because um, I don't know that we're really designed to be raised by just two people,
Hmm.
right? I think that multi-generational homes were probably, and research has shown that there was less disease when we
Yeah.
came from multi-generational households.
Yeah.
Two parents aren't enough to properly show us these things. My father worked very hard and went to school during some of my formative years.
Hmm.
Can I say, how dare he abandon me? No, I can't, right? That doesn't make sense. He was providing for us. And my mother um, had her own things she was managing and dealing with personally, and um, probably, leaned a little towards anxiety. Her system runs a little anxious sometimes. And so that's probably not the best model for me to learn how to soothe myself. And this is where the extreme caregiver showed up, right? This is where the empath showed up. Oh, I think your mic's muted.
Oh yeah, like you wanting to be a mother as a child.
Good point. I didn't make that connection, but yes,
Hmm.
most likely. Um one of my own internal family systems sessions, I had a memory come up where uh, I was crying. I had a need come up. I was an infant. I didn't recall this before the session. Um, and my mother looked at me like she was scared that I was crying to get me to stop crying, which sent the message to my nonverbal infant self. Oh, I have to care for her. I can't scare her, so I can't cry. So
Mm,
immediately her needs, my needs were sacrificed
mm,
in that moment, right?
mhm,
Not all needs, just maybe the need to express. Um, and this extreme caregiver part was born.
and is that something you still identify with today?
Yes, this part is still alive and well in me. And I've done a lot to unburden it so it's not so extreme. Um, in this way, in session work, I don't have to come out and try to rescue or caregive the person. I can trust their system, right? Some healers will want to come out and do for you and fix. And I had to learn, no, I have to do the work myself. Like, listen to the caregiver. Can you soften back as we really get to know this person's part that's in front of us? Like, so um, doing the work yourself internally is vital to being
Mhm.
successful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I believe that too, so I'm glad to hear that you do too. What what was the hardest challenge you had um, leading up to becoming a healer? Like, what was your journey to that? And can you sort of walk us through the dark night of the soul and like how this came to you?
Yeah. There was, to put it in terms of parts, there was a disowned part of me, what we would call an exile, um, that didn't feel lovable, didn't feel good enough or worthy of love. Um, and those exiles want redemption. They want a redemption story, a redemption arc in life. So I went around trying to prove I was lovable or find someone that would love me. And often we just recreate the same patterning over and over,
Mhm.
um, which further wounds that part and proves that we're not lovable, right? So I had that over and over. The real dark night of the soul, sort of culminated near my Saturn return. I was like 29. Um, and the man I thought I was going to marry sort of abandoned the relationship.
Mm,
And at this point in my life, I did not have the skills to cope. I didn't have any tools to manage it. My heart literally felt like it was shattered. Um, all kinds of other tumultuous changes were happening in my life. Um, I remember my roommate was we had both met somebody at a similar time. She was moving away to go marry this guy, and I was
mm,
stuck behind in the aftermath of the abandonment, sleeping on a mattress on the floor because part of the deal was I could stay there until I found a new place while they renovated and showed the apartment. So I was like on a mattress on the floor, and I just remember that being just like so awful. Um, and that's when one of my coworkers at this metaphysical bookstore that I was working with at the time offered me a Reiki session because I was a mess. I just I couldn't keep it together. Um, and what got me through was the amazing people I was surrounded by. These amazing healers at this metaphysical bookstore called East West Living. Um,
oh,
and
that's a cool place. I didn't know you worked there. I remember
yeah,
that place.
yeah, that was my boot camp into all healing and metaphysics. But what also got me through were movies.
Hmm. That's awesome. Were there any particular movies that stand out?
The Holiday.
That's great.
I just remember that being so healing, and to this day, it's one of my favorite movies because of that. Um, it was the love stories, but it was also the lightheartedness that was infused because Jack Black is just such a wonderful actor, and Kate Winslet, of course. And the way they talked about film, and it was just really inspiring to me. I could cry it out, with the
Yeah.
characters. So,
Mm.
um, and it really helped me, I think, understand at this time how healing the arts are. Truly, they're companions. Movies, theater, music, they're all companions on this journey. I don't know what my life would be like without the arts, for sure.
Mm. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I think we could hear that. I don't know if we could ever hear that enough.
Yeah.
um, even I was teaching yoga at a high school in the Bronx, and these kids had never been introduced to yoga or meditation, and really were benefiting from it. And I remember during the pandemic when everything went online, that was the first thing they took out. And I was thinking, well, these kids are home now. You probably need to move more than ever. And it was already fully funded, and we still had it was just taken away from them. And that was something that was built into their day. So I wonder, as adults, like, we don't have a lot of healing and really taking the time to listen and find ourselves again. And the arts, I find, I felt like I had to be an actor personally to kind of heal and get through stuff. But I'm glad you're saying that as a movie, because you don't have to be like an actor, right? You could just live through these characters, and it's stories and storytelling and identification and connection, humanity that we find, I think, so moving. And it reminds me of, like, my father used to be the one in our family that cried at all the movies, and
Mm.
everybody would be embarrassed. But I mean, I realized he literally was mirroring for me, just it's safe to cry. And he really taught me that and showed me that, and that it's still so rare. And even I see it in all genders now, like, oh my God, like, sorry, sorry, I'm crying, like, sorry, like, stuffing it down. It's like, why are we apologizing for emotions, and who are we to say what's appropriate or not? But I just wanted I was remembering that brief story, and I just want to say thank you, because I love I love romantic comedies and coming of age stories and things that really move me, and aren't just like people killing each other or raping each other, or all the stuff we're watching right now to get the dopamine hits, right? There's actually,
Yeah.
like, connecting with humanity, and art is such a great, important way to do that.
Yeah, and not that distant from what we do as healers. That was one thing that struck me, which is why the transition from creative arts to healing arts is so smooth. We're doing the same thing. When I studied Reiki, what was I doing? I was feeling for the pulse. What do you do in music? You're feeling for the pulse, right? I was feeling for heat. I was trying to somatically experience things, mindfully tune in, transmute energy into something useful. What do we do as artists? You know,
Mm.
healing and arts, um, that's why I feel like our artists aren't held to high enough esteem. You know, it's so important what the transformation that they're allowing other people through their modeling. And um, that's why the arts are just so important. Um, and it is heartbreaking that they're the first things to go. They're seen as extraneous. I mean, but this is how we heal. This is how we cope. Um, and I think they should be mandatory. This is
Mm.
how we spread the message. This is how we
Yeah.
spread wisdom.
Yeah. And you said, they're the first thing to go. They're the first thing to go in our country, how things are run now. So we actually can prioritize it just by talking about it, asking for it more, demanding it more. Um, we're really active in the school. There's a Waldorf school here, and we show up, and parents are like, "So do you have kids here?" We're like, "No." They're like, "So why are you here?" And like, "Because we really believe in the future of giving kids like space to be creative and express themselves, and adults need it too." So how did you find? So you went through, and thank you for sharing that story about the separation you went through and sleeping on the floor, and um, I can identify with some of those feelings for sure, and some of the experiences. Um, how did you get through that? You said the movies, and I know you sing now. Did you how did you find your own healing during that time? Or how did you come into healing during that time?
Um,
After the movie
it
was
was a
over
long
and you
journey.
cried, then what? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long journey. I mean, I think it took me a while to really recover, and I don't think that it was necessarily now I'm back to normal. I think it forever changed me as grief does. Um,
Mm, yeah.
I saw an amazing meme about how our grief doesn't go away with time, we grow around it. So it doesn't shrink, right? We grow around it. And
Wow, that's powerful.
I think that's the case. Yeah. Um, any sort of loss we experience, and I did, my heart was shattered. I feel like uh, that's literally how it felt. And I felt like it started to come back together. Like I started to have to repair that for myself just by feeling the pain and being present with it. I didn't know exactly that's what I was doing, but in the Reiki session, um, someone is holding space for you, and that presence, allowing you to be mindful and, really tune in. And in the end, you're embodied, right? You come out and you feel like, I've never been so in my body. How is this possible? And what it was teaching me was it was conditioning me to not um, come out of myself for love, right? To not, uh, I had a tendency to want to merge, right? This is a dissociative tendency, an empathic tendency to come out of myself to experience love out here with somebody else instead of,
Mm-hmm.
no, actually, I can contain it, I can embody it. Um, because this is very pushing energy, right? Me coming out to be like, let me see what's going on with Ben. How invasive and how pushing, right? So, um,
But it doesn't always occur that way when you're in it, right? I just know as you're talking about this, I could see myself doing this to so many of my ex-girlfriends, and it like one finally got through, and it took me like 5 years to go back and thank her and realize what she was trying to say, because I just couldn't get it, because I'm like, I'm just here to love you. And they're like, dude, I don't want that responsibility. Like, go love yourself. And I didn't know how. I just was always like reaching out here for it. Or that's not true. I did know how. I didn't, it was just so unfamiliar and uncomfortable. And I didn't have like tools for it per se. So I
yeah,
just thank you for that awareness, or reminding me of that too. I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a lot of grief there, but it as well, but it also is beautiful to see how we can grow around it and from it and out of it if we're willing. So how did you access let's see, what do I want to say about that? We were just talking about like getting in your body and coming out of you. So where did you learn to start to go within, do your own healing?
um, I'm still learning. um,
Amen.
I feel like I replaced a person with information. I became a seeker of wisdom, a seeker of knowledge. Um, I thought that was more evolved, right? Well, instead of love, you know what? I'm going to seek wisdom, and I'm going to know
Mm,
everything.
mm.
and and then I'll be a worthwhile person. So it'll kill two birds with one stone, right? So um And I don't feel that those times were of waste. I do acknowledge, wow, okay, I studied a lot of modalities. Some things landed and stuck with me, and some things I kind of left behind. Um, but I think I'm still learning how to be more impactful and influential in my own life. And when I get a taste of how effective it is to be embodied and present, and I see that's what gives you results, I become less tempted to dissociate. I become less tempted, and I show my parts, right? The the self essence in me, my true self, is able to, I'm able to have a connection with these other parts and say, look how impactful it was when we stayed in our body, right? Look how people come to you when you stay present instead of you coming out of yourself to chase them down, hunt them down. you know
Mm.
so I think that begins to reward you, right? Talking about dopamine hits, you start to get reward for being present and embodied, and everything starts to improve. So you start realizing, yeah, I feel I'm tempted to come out of myself here and obsess or fixate or um, fantasize, whatever it is, create something that isn't there. But do I actually? But wouldn't you rather just have the change?
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and how it reminds me how much we can get really caught up on our own patterning and programming. And I hear you talking about actually retraining your brain, retraining your body, practicing new patterns, practicing different actions. And that it's a lifelong journey, we just have today and we can practice today.
Exactly. And it's just like meditation, where as soon as you realize you're drifting, as soon as you realize you're going back into that pattern and you're mindful and aware, that awareness is so important. And then you can redirect and and self-correct. And um I don't know that I'm ever going to hit a destination where it's like, I never want to leave my body. It's just such a safe haven. I don't know if I'll ever get there.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a goal. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I think I love that you said that. I mean, for me, it inspires me to go seek things I love, like walks or nature or meditation or surfing or just getting in water or hugs, those things that um that I use and need and count on to help regulate my body. And so I think if my body was like perfectly balanced all the time, I don't know how much I'd go be like out there. I mean, maybe, yeah, sure I'd still have a lot of fun, but it would be different. I know for me, like my body going through it, so to speak, is what's led me to some of my like greatest healing and adventures and fun, just trying to seek like what's gonna work, what's gonna help this thing soothe. And um you mentioned earlier burnout. Have you dealt with burnout in your life, and how have you worked through that, or how are you working through it today?
Yeah, I think I have a tendency towards burnout, and that's probably due to some patterning. Um, it's one reason I left New York City. Um, I lived there for 12 years, and the last year, maybe two, it was a struggle. It was a struggle getting to work, being in the grind, feeling like spiritually I was really depleted, and therefore physically. And it was just, so I left, came back to my hometown, and tried to recoup. Um, I have to say I found a job that really supports homework balance. That's where I'm at right now.
Mm.
And I think being
Congratulations.
thank you. that's huge. I mean, it's definitely holding European values. So I do appreciate that. Not rewarding you for, grinding it out and staying late, extra hours. I still have that tendency. So I try to keep that in check. Um, and just knowing that I'm being encouraged to take care of myself. Um, I think that's rare to say, but I think that um, for me personally, it's just important that it's systemic because I tend to fall into patterns of what I'm surrounded by. As an empath, I'm sensitive to the agendas of others and uh, kind of the flow of energy that's already kind of established. I think we all are in a way. So I don't think that that's just me or just empaths, but um, I do think that we're slowly awakening to this. Things are slowly
Mm.
shifting. Um, so for me, it was about a whole system change of being in a company that really understands the human condition and what's required.
Wow, that's cool. It's good to know there's
Yeah.
some companies out there like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I want to give a shout out to that too. I just led a virtual corporate wellness seminar for a company, just about self care and stillness and movement. And it's now like getting popular. And I'm just so proud of companies reaching out to take care of their people, while they're also demanding work, right? Because it's like you
Yeah.
said, especially working from home, which I've created too. And I love it, can create a lot more hours. People are actually working more hours than ever because they can work from home and on their phones and all these things. So setting these healthy boundaries for yourself, I think, is so important. Recognizing your tendencies to overwork or to want to push through or add those extra hours on. What are some of the ways you set boundaries and self-care for yourself around those tendencies?
Um, Sometimes I do have a buddy system in place.
I love buddy systems. I'm big on not doing it alone. Yeah, because you
Definitely.
don't have to. If it doesn't work alone, then don't go try to do it alone, right? I
Yeah.
love that.
So I have a couple of people that hold me accountable. That'll say I'm going to put a debriefing on the schedule, and that's my cutoff time for work, and it's time to socialize a bit before I call it a night. So, um, and in our schedules, it's built in a little bit around that too. So a buddy system is definitely helpful for me, um, because for me, I get fixated, and I'm like, just okay, just a couple of more things on the to do, right? I'll just add a couple more things. I'm on a roll. Why not just? So that's my tendency.
Yeah, yeah,
So I definitely need someone to be like, if you haven't gotten to it yet, it's time's up. Let's
yeah.
call it a
That's
night.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any other things that you like that you've used or that you practice?
Um, on lunch breaks, I will sing through songs. I'll dance. Just to change up my physiology and to re-inspire myself and to make life worth living. I mean, you know? So, I have my go-to songs that I like to sing and, um, just incorporating because the arts are what heal me.
Mm,
Um, it makes me feel like myself. So, coming back to self and having a reset like that is really important for me.
that's awesome. And I love that you have like your playlist of songs to sing to, and I love dancing as well. That's great. That's I just realized that's what's missing for me. I don't have like a playlist inventory. That would be awesome. Just like a go-to like dance, something that just makes me dance. Yeah, that's
Definitely.
cool. That's really cool. I love it. We did just get a trampoline, so we're really excited about that.
Nice.
I'm incorporating that. Been giggling a lot more. And just because, like you said, like, why not have more fun in your life? Like, if we have one life and we get to choose it, like, what are we choosing to do with it and why?
Yeah.
So I really appreciate these tools. Is great. And you mentioned internal family systems, and you've said a few aspects about it. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that is and how what you've learned from it, or what we could learn from it?
Yeah, definitely. So internal family systems was founded by Dick Schwartz, but he acknowledges this was probably he wasn't the first to probably um, understand this, but to put it together in the way he has is super powerful. It's based on it's a multiplicity model, meaning we're all a bunch of moving parts. Um, we're not just one persona. There's a bunch of parts in there, and I think it's in even in our language where we say a part of me wants this and a part of me wants that. We can feel those polarizations, and if you really tune in, you can meet those parts, right, and understand their intents might not be all that dissimilar. They probably have very similar intention, these polarized parts, and once we can acknowledge that, it can provide some harmony and healing. He started as a family therapist, working only externally. So he found that if there was a problem person in the family, they wouldn't work and focus on that person. They would work on the other family members, right? That was what the work was. And so this is why it became internal family systems. Um, and his work really started when he um, was sort of getting to know and listening to patients who had eating disorders, particularly bulimia, and hearing them talk about there's a part of me that wants to binge. And then there's another part of me that wants to punish myself for that and hates myself for it. And there's another part that feels this relief when I purge, so it was like listening to these people talk, and their stories were very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he started understanding, oh, there are moving parts here, which we would call subpersonalities. Um, and sometimes we over identify, and that's what we would call being blended, right? If I say, I'm very angry right now, I'm furious, this is me being blended with an angry part,
Mm-hmm.
the part that shows up when it feels that it's appropriate to experience this anger or that it's triggered and activated. And generally, those parts are protecting a part that's disowned, that's carrying a lot of pain
Mm-hmm.
that we don't want to look at. We don't want that pain to flood the system. So we've frozen that part in time, right? This childlike aspect or very young part. Um, and so primarily the work is working with these protectors. Some are proactive, we call them managers. The proactive parts um, do things in anticipation of the pain flooding the system. So they make sure your schedule's booked, right? They clean the house till it's spotless. They make sure the locks are locked, right? Over and over. Um, and then there are firefighters,
What was the first one called again?
managers.
Managers. Okay, great.
Yeah. And then firefighters are reactive. So they're the part that's, um, I'm starting to feel that loneliness coming in. You know what? I'm just going to go binge. That'll prevent me from feeling it, right? Um, or starting to feel that um, heartache coming up. You know what? I'm just going to go and endlessly scroll on other people's profiles and see what they're up to. So they're reactive. They react to the activation of the exile and the pain flooding the system. And we tend to have just a few go-tos. that we really blend with, right? We're our favorites, the ones that are really active in the system. And they're in this place, they feel compulsive because they're so burdened. And so the role of the facilitator is really to be a hope merchant, as Dick Schwartz would say, and let them know, you could really not have to take on this extreme role and do something you might enjoy more if we just unburdened the part that you're protecting. So that's really what the work comes to, and it's really profound. It's really when people oftentimes people say, this young part of me has been waiting so long for someone to see it, acknowledge it, and rescue it, and I just never knew how that was going to happen. And I'm often able to say, that's what we just did. You were the rescuer. You were the one
Mm,
that showed up for it.
mm,
So it's powerful work.
yeah. That's really, really resonating with me. I really want to learn more now. I'm like, yeah, this really makes sense. And especially in the work that I do too. So I'll definitely be in touch with you more. And if there's
Yeah.
anyone for whom this is resonating, please reach out to myself and or Rachel to yeah, to get empowered to like take some action around what you care about. Rachel, where's the best place for people to get a hold of you if they want to get in touch with you or learn more?
Yeah. My website is urbanempath.com, and pretty much all the info is there. Um, Also Instagram urban_empath. Um, those are probably the primary places you might find me. I have a YouTube presence, Urban Empath, where I've done some intuitive work, and taken some journeys to help with transformation for others too. So, um, yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody who's interested in the work.
Awesome. Well, I will be one of them for sure. And yeah, relates a lot. Maybe because I was in family therapy when I was a kid and I was like figuring out all this stuff. Um, yeah, it resonates a lot. I also want to thank everyone who's been listening, past, present, and future, live, or otherwise. Just this is really for you, with you, co-creative with you. And please subscribe and share this with someone who you feel it can make a difference for. Maybe a family member or a significant other, who knows, or just a friend, Um, Rachel, I have a few closing questions for you. That's okay. Do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So this is so I'm do you want to sorry, did you want to say more about the protectors or the family systems? Did I cut you off about any of that?
No, I think that's the gist. I mean,
Okay, cool. I just
sometimes
want to make
we'll
sure.
sometimes we will have like spontaneous unburdenings, and uh other parts come in that we can't identify as any of those, like a wise guide or something even bigger than self might come in that we might call source, or but other than that, and I do infuse it with something called radiant human meditation, which is working with breath work and frequency, and it helps give that self essence to any parts that are open to receiving, so it helps
Mm,
seal the deal.
that's awesome. I love it. And I've worked with Rachel personally. I loved it. So I can definitely speak for that, attest to it. Rachel, how can we access our own healing at home with ourselves? What are some ways that you find that have worked for you or that you might suggest for other people? Just to, yeah, some place to start.
um to take just a few minutes to mindfully tune in to the signals your body's sending. Sometimes these are parts of you that are calling for your attention. It could be a pain, it could be some discomfort, it could be numbness. And if you just give it a minute and tune into it and listen instead of continuing to ignore it or potentially over medicate it, if you could just tune in, sometimes your awareness and acknowledgement is enough to heal. And maybe asking what it's trying to tell you. I think that can be powerful too. Also, if you're called, and I imagine you might be listening to this podcast, if you're called into something creative, taking time to write things out gets it out of you, gets it on a page. And this is something I learned with intuitive work. I'll get the same message over and over and over until I say it out loud in the session or in the reading. I used to do intuitive reading work. And I would be embarrassed to say something. I would think, this can't be true. This can't be right. I'm not saying that. But it would continue to come in until I just said it out loud. And then I can move on to the next thing. It's important for healing and purging out energies to get it out of you. So find a way to do that, whatever works for you. Dance it out, sing it out, write it out. When we have a lot of charged energy in the system, it can be overwhelming, overstimulating. We're like an overcharged crystal or battery, right? It's important to get it out. And if we don't, we might refer to it as anxiety. We might refer to it as overwhelm, overstimulation. And then if we need to be replenished because we feel like we're depleted, I would say access the charge in your muscles by moving, dancing it out. And there are, of course, awesome things that do both, right? Like meditation, yoga. They can, they're adaptogenic in nature, you might say, because if you run anxious, they'll balance you. If you run depleted, they'll balance you as well. So finding what works for you. There's great. So many paths.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have a couple of tools because some I notice some people just don't know where to start, and there's so many overloads of information. So I love this.
Yeah.
Like, these are things that are really accessible. Those are really great suggestion. I approve these suggestions. I love them. And yeah, they've worked for me too. And I love that you said your voice too. Say it out loud, speak it into existence, write it down. You said you sing. You know, I went to this sound healing event, and the facilitator just lovely reminded us how important our own voice is, and that we are literally designed physiologically to heal ourselves with our own body and voice and sound and resonance, and there's no other sound like us on the planet. No one else vibrates the frequency we do. So we have the own like magic sauce for our own needed frequencies, right? So if we can just practice using our own voice and trusting our own instrument, that there's so much infinite possibilities there and gifts that you may unlock too, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And I do have to say that no matter what you believe, I call on a higher power. I ask for support. Before this interview, I said, thank you for speaking through me. Whoever you are, whatever is out there guiding me, whatever force is out there, because I think we have ideas of what that is, but I don't think our limited minds can really grasp what it truly is. So I don't like to limit it. Just say, just call on whatever's out there to support us. So I think that's powerful to do that in the morning, to set an intention to co-create your day, for sure.
I love that. That's so wonderful. Okay, so our last closing questions. I mean, you've said a lot of it already, but what is your current morning routine ideally? Like when you're, what do you have a morning routine? Do you have something that you count on and go to regularly?
Um, yes, I think we're all creatures of habit.
And let me say specifically your routine for self-care.
Yes. So, in the morning, before my eyes fully open, I I do ask that I'm surrounded by white light and shielded and protected, and that I resonate with um, my highest potential and highest good.
Mm,
Something along those lines, whatever my groggy state can can summon.
that's
Um,
beautiful.
I open the blinds so the sunlight comes in, and I greet the sun. Um, I might turn on music that uplifts to start my day, and whatever protocol I'm on nutritionally right now, doing speaking of burnout, um, I'm on some I do like lemon water, and then like fresh squeezed lemon in water, and
That's one of my favorites.
yeah, get that liver functioning optimally. And then also orange juice, coconut water, and some kind of salt that's like flaky. I can't remember, but it's supposed to help with adrenal repair. So I've been doing that, and I do feel great doing that. Um,
Great. I'm gonna add that to mine. That's nice. I love it. Yeah, that
yeah.
makes sense. I mean, I know I've been to a lot of like really hot countries, like when I was in Vietnam, and we would have something salty in the mornings. I would feel so much better and actually like keep the water. And like, I couldn't stay hydrated till I started increasing my salt and those little
Mm,
things and those electrolytes or the coconut water, like these little things that are natural that like they're from the earth. Everything you're
yeah.
talking about. How amazing.
Yeah. And I might do some vocal warm-ups, like lip trills, and imagine it moving throughout my whole body. So definitely doing sound sound healing, whether I'm aware I'm doing it or not. That's definitely something I do just to warm up for the day.
Awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. Those are great. Those are great. And then here's a curveball. If your life was a movie, what would be the title?
Um,
First thing that comes to mind.
I would say something like off the beaten path or side trail, something like that. Because I think I make big plans. I'm a Sagittarius, so I aim for my goal, but um, oftentimes I'm taken to an even better place that I couldn't have
Mm.
ever anticipated.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And who would you cast as your parents
Um, Cast as my parents in the
in the
movie of my
film? Yeah,
life,
yeah, yeah. The Hollywood version.
um, meaning who are my parents like, or who are my dream parents?
Whatever, you can answer that however you want to.
um, hmm, good question. I mean, I would say Kate Winslet as my mother, even though she's clearly not old enough to be my mother. Um, but if I was a baby in the movie, right? Um,
No. That sounds, yeah, she's
and
awesome.
I adore her. And let's say Leo DiCaprio. Say he survived the Titanic and they just ended up together.
That's awesome. I love it.
That's a love story that I would
That's
want to be
great.
birthed out of.
Perfect. And if you had one gift that you could give the world today, what would it be?
I think the understanding of how much healing potential and power you have inside of you that you're outsourcing all the time. That what you're seeking out there, you have access to in here, and even more powerfully and potently. And if I could go back in time and tell my younger self, in fact, I might do that later, travel back in time and let my younger self know that, um, I could have managed. I wouldn't avoid the painful experiences, but I could have much better managed them and healed more quickly.
Beautiful. I like that. And if we had this gift, what do you see us all doing?
I see us all radiating love from within, consuming less, um, valuing each other on a whole other level. Instead of valuing what we see, instead of valuing what we own, I feel like we would value our connection with each other more, and we would care for each other, um, with much more responsibility, and not just in dutifully doing so, but just knowing that I'm you, you're me. It's like when that where there's a meme where there's someone like, I want to, they're trying to separate water out of the ocean, and it's like, you're part of the ocean, man.
I
We're
love
all
that.
part of this, right? So me caring for you is the same as me caring for me. We're all part of this. Um,
Mm,
so I think we would have much more compassion for each other's pain and pleasure.
mm. Yes. Yes. Here's
Yeah.
to that. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. And thank you again to everyone who's listening. Don't forget to subscribe. You can contact Rachel at urbanempath.com. You can listen to past episodes here and share this with someone who could use it. Spread the love. And Rachel, thank you again. You have a beautiful day.
You too. Honor being here. Thanks, Ben.
Oh, so